Why don't we save the election reactions for about 30 minutes until we get some poll figures in? A lot of them closed at, that would be about 4 minutes ago. I don't know what hour that is your time.
9 p.m. Eastern,
let's
actually.
Give them a chance to count. It looks like this blue wave thing may have hit the House. It looks like we're going to keep the Senate. But until the final vote is counted and everything, I guess you can't count it done.
Yeah.
Rather depressing.
I don't know how it's going to turn out, Stan. I'm still optimistic.
I am too, Stan. I'm optimistic as well. Okay, so hang in there, brother. Don't lose faith. I just got the feeling that we're going to be okay.
Well, I guess in 2016 we were down to the wire at the end before everyone realized that the good news was we'd won.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Numbers will tell.
Yeah,
go ahead. No, numbers will tell. Go ahead. I think you're wise too. Let's save that for later. When the better numbers come in. So go ahead.
Yeah. Now I haven't. I've got an error on my show images page. I haven't linked to Michael Heiser's part 2, but you can link to 50. Slide 50, and then go over to his part 2. The problem is, I've known Mike for some time, and we talk every now and then, not too often. But one of the problems I see with his argument at this point, and being fair, he hasn't finished the series. He's doing about 15, 20 minutes at a time and putting them up as he goes through a very scholarly approach to where Atlantis was, if Atlantis existed, that kind of thing. And I can't fault the sources he's quoting, but his interpretation of some of the details in Plato's account, which is really the basic document that we should all use to try to find Atlantis, and any other documents that hint at it, etc., have to be subservient to what is in Plato. It's like Plato's the Bible on Atlantis. And he's placing it at the moment in this episode 2 out in the Atlantic as a little island. But I think it will change as he gets to some of the more exotic and far out views that he's going to discuss, which will probably include mine. But the major problem that everyone that has been looking for Atlantis, including Dr. Heiser, is this. They don't allow for the continents to all be put back together and turned upside down. The surface of the Earth was almost totally upside down to what it is now. So when they reference things, as Dr. Heiser did, about Atlantis being, to the east of Greece, well, that would put it to the Straits of Gibraltar or out into the Atlantic Ocean or in the Mediterranean somewhere. And as hard as they can't find proof and find an island, even in the mud maps between North America and Europe. They can't find any signs of a missing continent that's submerged. If you look at the mud maps, there's no way. So to properly do this, you flip it upside down, like I've done in my Atlantis video on YouTube. And once you do that, east of Greece becomes, west of Greece becomes the Antioch port spoken of in the Bible, which is between Syria and Turkey. Now that was underwater, 8,000-9,000 years ago, whenever the Atlantis story was told about. But once you do that and you lower the sea level back down, or land level back down, so it's all underwater, you can see a clear path in water all the way from the Mediterranean, and that would be, depending on how you're looking at it, would be east of Greece if you're looking straight on it. And anyway, which was west when it was upside down. I know this sounds complicated, but the Earth's shell, the crust, that thin film on top of the molten Earth, was much more fluid in those days. It could be moved around by large meteor or comet impacts, which did cause the flood and which did spin the crust of the Earth around to where it is now. But in the process, it made huge sweeping tidal waves across the entire planet, which was the Great Flood, caused the layer of water underneath the crust, the Moho discontinuity it's called, to crack in many places and gush super hot water up into the oceans, for 40 days and 40 nights, like the Bible says. So bear this in mind. Look at my video. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but look at my video on that on the YouTube channel, Stan Deyo on the YouTube. Watch it and see how I place the argument for the upside down thing. Now, Dr. Heiser has to write his stuff to, keep his credibility in the professional community. He has to write it on things that are proven. So the inverse crust of the Earth, the smaller diameter Earth, these are two very controversial things in the academic circles. They just haven't caught up yet. So I want you to bear that in mind as you watch his scholarly discussion of Atlantis. I think he did a good job so far with the facts, but I do hope he includes the upside down Earth thing and goes the way that he's supposed to, because there's just no other landmass big enough to house the fertile plain 100 miles by 300 miles and the little island, circular island, which is Poseidon's home, that was off the coast of Atlantis, which is Saudi Arabia, or all the Arabian continent. And in those days, a continent. It's the peninsula now. But anyway, bear that in mind.
And Stan, that's very interesting because for people like myself, it's been a while since I read about how Atlantis, how it was described, it was destroyed. And if I'm correct in assuming that your understanding as well is that it wasn't just Atlantis that was submerged at the time. This was more of a massive geological event, and what continents were falling and some were rising. This was part of the separation of Pangea. Is that what the one landmass was called? If you can kind of describe how you think the scenario of Atlantis being wiped away, how that looked.
Okay. In those days, and I think this was just before the Great Flood in the Bible, I think the Great Flood was caused by these sweeping tidal waves that went around the planet and into the corners and into the polar regions for several days from the impact of at least one, maybe several asteroids. So here we have, let's say, this is Saudi Arabia today, the Arabian Peninsula, and over here was India, which kind of scooted down and was off the east coast of Africa, as I show in the video. So a large asteroid or comet hit on the east coast of India, down on the southern part of it, near what's called the Kudapa region, or the edge of the rim of the crater, which was called the Kudapa impact. I found it. They had lost it, couldn't find it, but I found it in the lecture, and I show where it is. And this hit so hard that when you look, if you're looking at a map of the Mediterranean here and Saudi Arabia here, it hit so hard when it was Atlantis that this area here went like that. It tilted the whole island at that time of Atlantis from the impact over here in India. That impact did a number of things, adding a lot of heat energy to the core. And also it, even though it was in the direction of the turn of the Earth now, in those days it was anti-turn. So it caused two factors to make the Earth want to expand. And it expanded to its present diameter, which is about 25% larger than it was in diameter then. So you've got the mantle being flipped around. You've got the continents, like you were talking about the Pangea, where all the continents were together, starting to split. Now, the Peleg in the Bible, they said in his day, the Earth, the Earth split, or the continents were divided, because that was in the time of division from the word Peleg. Now, if that does truly mean that he was alive during the time the continents separated, then it could have been at ground zero when the flood hit just after that, when he was born a few years later, about 100 years later, or it could have been going on since the flood and slowly, and the major divisions were realized in his lifetime as a youth when he was born. Now, the Egyptian records do talk about things that, which is what was on the stela that Solon gave through relatives down to Plato. But they do talk about the time that the Atlanteans controlled a part of the the west coast, the southwest coast of the Mediterranean, and the Asia Minor region over there, and up even into Athens in Greece. That's where the war between the Atlanteans and the Greeks was talked about. So all that area is mentioned in Egyptian records, and the change in the rising of the sun is mentioned 4 times in the Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Yeah. That's on your show images page 2, and I saw that. Did the sun rise in the west? Egyptian evidence. That's number 52 on your show images page.
Yes. And if you read through that, you'll see that the Egyptian records, being closer to the event or closer to Atlantis, are more accurate and more detailed than the Chinese record. But in the hieroglyphs in Egyptian history, they do talk about the sun rising in the east in 2 different periods of time, and in the west in the alternate periods of time. Now, how long it was between those rises, the sun being reversed, I don't know. But the last one, obviously, where it rises in the east for us, we're the last of the 4 inversions. And that was caused, I am sure, by impacts of large asteroids, which I'm going to show you some more I found in North America. I found 10 over the last week that hit in Arkansas, which left incredible footprints. Wait till you see them. Anyway, that did happen. The Chinese records do kind of suggest that the sun didn't always rise in the same place. And they even have records about the sun standing still, like in the Old Testament, where God held the sun still for, I think it was Joshua. Okay, well, that was daytime. Over in China, they record an approximate period of time where it was dark for, too long. It was the opposite side of the planet. So these things all do add up to a massive event happening. I know Dr. Heiser doesn't think much of Velikovsky because Velikovsky made some assumptions in his writings that were, wrong, we know now. But they were lateral thinking out of the box to try to suggest what happened to cause these massive changes. Now, the Egyptian records also record, one Pharaoh recorded, when will the earth stop this moaning and groaning? And Velikovsky said about that was because the continents were splitting apart. Now, from after the flood until the time of Peleg in there, the splitting apart of the continents may not have happened in like one day. I mean, that would be horrific. But as it tore apart various continents and started to have them drift apart and swell the diameter of the planet and stretch the surface, the crust like this, that could have taken, up to, the major part up to 100 years or so when the time of Peleg was. Even today, we're seeing what they call continental drift, where continents are drifting this way and that way at so many millimeters per year. But if you look at it as a graph, when the Pangea split occurred up here, the rate of separation would have been high, like this. But as it gradually slowed down, we're down here in the low peak of it, and so they're calling it drift instead of the tail end of a hyperbolic curve, as the splitting action slowed down. There's just a lot of things in physics and metaphysics and religion and historical records that all need to be brought into the fundamental precepts that you're going to build your argument on to where Atlantis was and what caused the flood and all those kind of things. So if you don't flip the planet upside down at the time of the Great Flood and Atlantis, and if you don't condense the Earth back down to where it was before it expanded, then your argument it will go the other direction toward the Atlantic and toward the Pillars of Hercules. So I'm telling you, it's the greatest mystery in human history as far as geology and archaeology. And the reason that no one has positively found it yet until me is because they didn't put the conditions of the planet back to initial conditions so that you could then take the Plato argument and find the places and directions and things that he talked about. And I am positive that Saudi Arabia and Dammam Island are the island off the coast, Dammam, and Saudi Arabia is Atlantis. I mean, look, Joshua, when he went into Israel with the tribes, to claim the land, the instruction that God gave him was go to this camp, this village, and there, kill every living person, all the animals, destroy them all living things, because they were part of hybrid. They weren't pure. Their gene structure wasn't pure. They were giants, and we find evidence in the biblical records. We find evidence in the archaeological records that there were giants over in the north of Jordan and up into Syria, and where you have the Golan Heights. There's a circular ring formation that was built by the giants. You know about Og, the king of Bashan, that same area. He was a giant. They tell how big he was. And then you have Goliath and his brothers, and probably other members of his tribe. So giants did exist, and they were the furthermost part of Atlantis up toward the Mediterranean. And even there was a city called Gades or Gadirius, which has still got the same name now, was named after one of the sons of, as a territory of one of the sons of Poseidon. So this is recent history. This is not 12,000 years ago. I'm thinking we're looking at 6,000 to 9,000 years, somewhere in that period of time for the Garden of Eden, and then after that, a few thousand years for Atlantis, and this crossbreeding of the fallen ones that's mentioned in Genesis 6. The evidence is there, and I have found, as you know, on my if you look on that show images page, right about the top third, it says click here to view the Middle Eastern mysteries in Saudi Arabia and other countries, where I have located and documented for you, so you can look at it, where these black stone formation circles and lines and triangles and circles within circles, where all, you've got them there. You see what I'm talking about, where all these things are claimed by the current occupants of these lands to be from the men of the olden days, a long lost civilization. And Saudi Arabia, it's got a lot of sand on it because when it tilted down like that, this area here where the majority of the fertile plain and the houses and stuff that they had it's all covered in layers of sand, which in some cases I found as shallow as 80 feet, but it's a lot deeper in others. But that is it. These things that surface up in the highlands and the mountains on the volcanic soil, or like the volcanic layers that came out of all the volcanoes there, they preserved a lot of the shapes and artifacts that you can see in that sub page I've got there about the Middle Eastern mysteries. So I'm positive it's just going to take the academic world a little time to get around to the right way of thinking. And I'm not being conceited saying that. I'm just looking at facts. They cannot, any of them, any of these locations they talk about, these other locations, none of them have the right size and the right components together, the right attitude, the right bearing, the mountains in the right place, the great rivers, the striations, which I found in Saudi Arabia, these parallel lines that were used to ship the logs down into the Atlantis capital and into the agricultural area there near Riyadh. These things are there. You can see them. It's not made up. So I'm glad you're interested in that, Doug, and it's certainly one of my pet investigations, as was the Garden of Eden, and is. I guess I'm still looking on some of that stuff too. But
thanks for the breakdown of that, and that's one of the things, like you said, it's people in the scientific community don't and can't agree on, and won't in many cases even entertain the biblical stories of. And as you said, from Peleg and the flood, everybody wants to have. They even try to say that you can't confirm that Jesus actually lived, or that King David lived, in the historical accuracy of the Bible is in question, and science can't even agree that that the Bible is actually recorded history. They're right. Constantly trying to verify it. So you're not going to get people coming together, to say, well, this is how it was, just like the case you put together. And I stand with your research and your knowledge. I tend to agree with exactly what you said about the world being a different place, and things changing and expanding and growing. And we, unfortunately, are so far removed from that. And history does not do the greatest job, for whatever reason, in indexing and archiving what actually happened, that a lot of holes are left to fill in the blanks. And this is where you get a lot of the theories that we see from other people. And it's very interesting nonetheless, and something that I see a lot of people talking about as of late, the Atlantis. And I actually saw one person, I watched a video, I think it was yesterday, where they believed it was in Tanzania where Atlantis was, and they based it on some spiral design in the sand or in the land formation in some part of the land there. But none of their other arguments make sense. So that what you've put together, and I'll have to go through what Michael Heiser's put together, but you put together, to me so far, makes the most sense. And I will have to also go back and read Plato and some of the ancient philosophers and what they say about Atlantis. But it's fascinating, nonetheless.
Make yourself a list, like I did. Go to those sources you're talking about and write down, okay, this guy says this has to be found, okay? And that's all I've done. And as you said at the start of this last point here, to properly look for that lost city, that lost continent, you need to go as much as you can back to the original conditions. And if you think that the crust of the earth never moved much and didn't flip upside down, well, you're in trouble right there. But if you put that as a building block, and you put the change in the diameter of the earth as a building block to build on and locate these places, then you're going to have a much better chance of arriving at the right answer. And there's no other place on the planet. I mean, they try to say in one of the locating documents that Atlantis, or the Poseidon's island, was the Rikat Formation in northwest Africa. You've seen that, where it's perfectly a big hole with circles around it that apparently are very close to the rings that are described by Plato around the castle there he built for Cleito that Poseidon built. But nice, but it's a natural formation, and the water that needs to be hot underneath and the water that needs to be cold underneath, those well pockets aren't there. They're over at Dammam Island, the only place in that whole region, the Middle East there in North Africa, that has hot and water and cold water reservoirs underneath, a central site like Dammam Island. You have to have enough room around something like the Rikat Formation to have 100 miles by 300 miles rectangle that's a fertile plain. And then you've got to have that being a part of a larger continent. And if you look at the Rikat Formation and into the ocean areas around there, it's not there. There's just no dirt to supply those things. So it's a nice argument, but very, very flimsy. And so it's there. And I'm certain that this is where the pollution of the human race occurred, and why God was so mad and destroyed the majority of these beings with the flood, and which is by asteroid impact. Some of them got through it. I mean, the rabbis get really upset when they try to figure out how did Goliath and Og, the king of Bashan, how did these big giants get across the flood and survive? Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of time between the flood and the earth splitting apart, and the flood was about a year long, and the rabbis that are trying to justify, that everything was destroyed except for Og, who made all the giants after that, was that he takes the name of Noah and the ark in Hebrew, and they flip it around and use some gematria, and they say, well, Og, the giant, before the flood, saw it happening and raced over to the ark and held on to the top with his hands, and Noah fed him through the window for a year. And that's how the giant appeared on the other side of the flood. And the reason they have to do this is interpreting one word in the Bible, ha'eretz, E-R-E-T-Z in English. And eretz is land, like dirt, country, region. It could be the whole world, but there are about 4 or 5 different interpretations of the word eretz. It could have been a local flood. It could have been a partial flood of the entire planet. That's why the ambiguity comes in, and why the rabbis cross their eyes and try to not go against the word of God as they're reading it, because they don't know which version of that word applies in the Noah story. But when you see evidence all over the other continents of the planet, and near the poles of swirled waters and huge, massive movements of water, it did hit the majority of the planet. But when you also consider that giants did survive over near Israel and in Israel and Canaan, then you know that some didn't, and God appointed Joshua and Israel to clean up the leftovers that shouldn't be allowed to live, these hybrid beings, Cyclops, Hercules, and all these demigods that are in Greek religion. It's just there. Anyway, I don't think it's that important anymore, but it does kind of explain a lot to me and others about the authenticity of the Bible and why things happened. And
Stan, do you think the Library of Alexandria, said to be one of the most extensive historical archives? Do you think that was destroyed, or what the information was in there would have filled in a lot of the holes that we have in today in the debates? Yeah,
absolutely. They talk about the French, occupying Egypt at one time, and make a joke about, well, I guess the French soldiers were wrapping their fish and chips in archaeological documents, and throwing them away. It was just leftovers of the fire. It's just such a shame. But yes, I think that there was a lot there. And remember, Moses was raised in the palace there, or one of the palaces for the Pharaoh. He was a son of Pharaoh by being adopted. So he had access to the library facilities, and I don't know whether he had access to the library at Alexandria. I can't remember when it was actually destroyed, but he would have had access to all the documents that Egypt had on the old world. And so as best he could remember, I'm sure he put that into the Genesis account. Remember, the Ten Commandments were originally scripted by God, carved into the two stones. But Moses sat down and wrote, what God had said to him, write this history here and this history there. And I'm sure Moses drew on the memories and data that he did get out of Egypt on the old world himself. And part of the Babylonian records he used too, because we can see that he has what's called a 65-line Babylonian clay tablet repeat cipher, where at the end of this 65th line, that sentence is repeated in the 66th line to show that those two pages or two clay tablets went together. They didn't use numbers. They used, catchphrases from the end of the first one to the start of the next one. Anyway, all these things indicate that what we thought we knew about the old world is a little lacking.
Yeah, I often wonder what was in that collection in Alexandria, and how fascinating it'd be to and then the Vatican has all these locked away historical records too, and you wonder what they're holding and how accurate the stuff is that they have down there that pretty much nobody has access to.
Well, there have been suggestions in modern times that the Vatican destroyed or covered up evidence of the Atlantean or the giants in various places. They found them all over the world because they were unclean and, evil things. So they didn't even want people to look at them anymore. So they built a church over the top of it and bury it, that kind of stuff. And I can see why in their superstitious way they would have done that. But that's why we don't have a lot of the giant bones and the giant utensils and things, because people would take it in the Christian world to, their local priest, and they went eventually to the Vatican, and they'd say, well, we better disappear this because this will frighten the congregation or whatever. So I'm thinking that's why it's happening, why it's been so hard for us to get to the bottom of all.
Interesting.
Okay, run up to slide 65.
All right, 65. Let's see. All right.
Now, what got me started on this last week, I just can't remember the guy's name. I've got his email here, but he's a member of the Choctaw Nation. And he said, I've been looking at these mountain ridges here in Arkansas, which you'll see as the dark lines across that screen. And he says, I think that Chicxulub meteor that hit down in, the southern part of the Gulf of Mexico there, it made a shockwave that went up here and formed these mountain ridges. And I wrote back to him. I said, first time I wrote back to him, I said, well, look, that's a nice idea, but you can see that there's evidence there of two humps, of two things. There was only one Chicxulub meteor down there. And so I doubt that that's it. And then I got to thinking about it, and I zoomed in with Google Earth in a lot closer. Holy cow. He was right that these were caused by large impactors like comets or asteroids, but not by the Chicxulub one. I found 10, at least, I'm still looking for them, 10 large craters and drag trails as these large objects skimmed to the earth like this and just kind of were slowly coming down and hitting the dirt and shoving the dirt ahead of them like that, and then they went into the crust. Now, that map there that you see in 65. If you look at the second line where it says click here to download the KMZ files for Google Earth. If you double click on that yellow thing there and you've got Google Earth open, it will automatically give you the list of these 10 locations, and you can click on them. It'll take you right to what I was looking at there where those yellow pens are. So you too can get in there and see exactly what I'm talking about, because it is magnificent. The biggest one I found was in slide 67. It was a half a mile in diameter object. As I say, whether it was a comet or whether it was a low orbiting piece of asteroid, whatever, it made a crater 7 miles in diameter, and it drug 27 miles until it stopped. So double click on image 67 and have a look at that. Can you see that was something that made a splash in the Earth's crust?
It just called it for that.
Wow.
Wait a second. What am I looking at here?
Well, do you see?
Go ahead.
Well, do you see where that yellow pen is?
Yes.
That's where that object finally came to rest. But if you look back behind it, you'll see the drag trail as it was just gradually coming.
Okay.
And it pushed all these waves in the surface of the Earth there ahead of it and around it.
So, okay, you kind of have to look at it a little bit. I was focusing on the red line, but
no, that's just the drag path.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. I see what you're saying. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Hold on just 1 second here. What'd you say, Holly?
It just been called for the House to go to the Democrats.
Yeah, Stan, I know what you're going to say. I heard her say it. NBC, ABC, Fox News is projecting the Democrats are going to take control of the House. I still don't know that to be the case. We've seen I've been following very closely their projected chances of controlling the House. And at 8:03, they had an 86% chance of controlling the House, according to the ABC News election. Now at 9:26, they had a 53% chance. So they've been losing ground all night, and the momentum continues to look like it's moving in the Republicans' direction. But now, as those odds for the Democrats get lower and lower, it seems that the media companies are now just throwing it out there, saying that the Dems are going to take the House. But I don't know that to be the case.
Yeah, I'm not sure, buddy. I know what they're saying, but I don't know.
I think it's too soon to tell.
The Cruz O'Rourke race, I'm seeing votes separating the two by 81.
Yeah, that's very close. Very close. That's probably going to be a recount, that one.
And Menendez won too by a very slim margin, a few thousand votes. They're calling it with only 36% reporting, but the margin's so slim. I don't know, with only less than 50% in, how they can call it. Also, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania is being given the check mark, and it looks like he will hold on over Lou Barletta. But also, Marsha Blackburn is being projected the winner in Tennessee.
That's a given.
Yeah, picking up a Senate seat there.
House seat. Blackburn.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to see gains in the Senate. A few seats gained in the Senate, regardless of the Cruz O'Rourke race, and the House, I think, still up for grabs.
Yeah, I wouldn't lose hope. I just wouldn't lose hope.
Well, I'm looking at Fox News, following the election, that whole campaign page, and they say with 59% of the vote in on this one for Texas, that Cruz is ahead by just under 2%. That's still within attack range by O'Rourke, but it looks like Cruz will take Texas if it keeps the modern trend here. I was hoping that some of the eastern states polling would be compromised and the Democrats wouldn't show up in the numbers they want because of bad weather and they didn't want to get out and do a little work to get to the polls. So maybe the bad weather will work in our favor eventually. I don't know about the West Virginia race with Morrissey and Manchin. There's about 5% separating them. at 65% of the vote counted. And that's, I've seen that swing back the other way because of certain districts that aren't counted till later, and they're very heavy in favor of your candidate. But, I'm certainly going to stay up and watch and see what happens. I'm not going to give up. But
yeah, I am. We are too here, or at least I am.
Maybe we were talking about that off air before bringing you on, Stan. I said, you know what? I might just go home, turn on Netflix, shut my computer, and then get up at 5, 6 a.m. and start from there, rather than sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting for every decision and vote to be tallied tonight. Because we could be looking at late into the morning, early hours of the morning,
and I
this is settled.
Yeah, and Stan, what I believe though, the bigger story here is the fact that we even have to have this discussion. My question to you and my concern to everyone is, how in the world can America, a once great country, somehow decide that a socialist system is what they want? I mean, you've got these.
If there's no caravans running Venezuela.
Yeah. And I'm watching these female. I'm sorry about what women. Look, there's some women I just who are just fawning over this O'Rourke character, and oh my goodness, and to me, theater. Yeah, it's theater. It's brainwashing. But it's amazing to me. We have to have this discussion in a larger sense. In 2018, talking about a socialist legislative branch,
Holly and I have lived in a socialist country, and it was in Australia. They went socialist some time back, and I guarantee you don't want to live in a socialist country. I think it started with the mentality of the prisoners that came down there from England. A lot of the Irish and stuff, mates, shipmates in prison, but they go down to Australia and they all stuck together, and when they say mate, they mean like mates in the ship or, fellows. And they have the tall poppy syndrome down there, which led them into this socialism because nobody is allowed to shine more than their friends, their mates. They don't want to look richer. They don't want to look smarter. They just want this level playing field. And, to get along down there, I had to, and Holly, we had to, kind of control our bright thoughts and statements and things, and otherwise we were totally ostracized because they were afraid of us, or we weren't playing the game of being equal mates out there. And as tall poppies are in the field, they get cut down first, and that's why this socialist mentality is there in Australia. It's interesting to see that the TV stations on the East Coast are carrying the election results live for the Australians, what we're watching here, because at one time they depended on America, but now they're becoming more dependent on China and Japan. So socialism, no, don't do it. You lose your guns. You have to be mundane. Your wages can't be by your talent anymore. It's just bad. Just bad.
If this, again, this is the bigger story. I believe that we even have to have this discussion, and the bigger story here is the number of brainwashed individuals in this country who believe that this is a good thing.
Well, look at this. One more thing I thought about the socialist thing. For 3 of the last 5 years, I've been filing to get my Social Security from Australia, being down there 30 years and paying taxes, right?
Right.
And you have to give them access to your bank accounts and everything about you, right? And they shot back every year. No, look, you can't get your Australian Social Security because you own a house. And even though we have a mortgage on it, they say no, you don't need the Social Security, so we're not going to give it to you.
They decide that, right? They decide you don't need it.
Yeah, they decide. And then I talked to our Social Security department, being optimistic, saying, well, look, if I get my Australian Social Security, how does that affect my American one? Oh, well, we'll have to diminish yours because you're getting some from another country. And the other country, Australia, said the same thing about the Australian. and by the time they got through with all this stuff, I thought it's probably a good thing that they're not going to let me do it because it drives me nuts trying to fill out the paperwork. Keep them honest. Socialism.
My goodness. Well,
what a
there
nightmare.
it is. Yeah. And well, okay. So Stan, if you don't mind, on this path of on the same path here. What would happen, or what's your take if we wake up in the morning and we find that, yeah, Pelosi's the Speaker of the House, and I mean, where do you see this country at that point? Where do you see us heading? I mean, Fox called it for the Democrats. I just want to tell them to shut the freak up.
Fox wouldn't even run Trump's campaign ad, saying it was too incendiary or inflammatory against illegal aliens, and it's just ridiculous. The PC games that they play, and it's they can call it all they want, but until every vote's counted and we see, I mean, if we listen to these people, Hillary Clinton would have been president without us even having a vote. So we got to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
On our front page, Holly put up under the prophecy section today, about halfway down, you'll see a prophecy section of the guy. It's in a blue photograph of the guy talking. It's Charlie Stamp, and he prophesies some amazing specifics about the midterm election, which is more like the Republicans take the House and the Senate again. So it's a little short video thing, which might be worth people looking at if they want to be encouraged. The guy has been fairly accurate before, so we're all kind of paying close attention to how he does here. He's a Christian man. So, and
also, Stan, I mentioned a report, Gallup poll since 1946. Every election since 1946, they have not been inaccurate in reporting the election beforehand, and they stated today that they believe the GOP will retain control of the House, and they haven't been wrong since 46. So that's another interesting little piece of information.
It's maddening. This whole process is maddening to follow this close, but I'm not calling anything for anybody at this point. They can bite me. Sorry.
Remember how it was with Trump? We were all biting our nails right up to the wire there, thinking, darn, but then all of a sudden, what was it? Was it Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania, Florida, yeah, Ohio.
Yeah, just bang, and surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So we've all been praying, and after we finish praying, we say, well, Lord, your will be done. You know best what we need. But I sure hope that we're going to have a few more years of the good guy. Yeah. Good guys.
Yeah, otherwise it's going to be just gridlock up, more so than it is. I mean, we already have a problem with the rhinos anyway, but and the globalists, but we'll see.
Stan, back to your show images page. I was looking at number 60, and the reason I'm looking at this is David Wilcock and Corey Goad video.
Yeah.
I know who David Wilcock is, and this guy is one of the biggest hacks out there. He might be most well known for Ancient Alien, that show Ancient Alien Astronauts or whatever it is. But really, he kind of tagged onto that at the end. This guy's famous for making failed predictions, a new ager. I mean, there's not enough. I could say bad things about the guy all night. But what's with this video? And what are they promoting here?
Well, they are. What are they promoting? Well, Corey Goode is a lunatic. First of all, you'll see him in there about where he's visited the moon and Mars and the base, and he even David Wilcock thought he was a loon. And that tells you how far down the chain he was. But in the video, David's being interviewed in a different place to Corey, but they're being interviewed by a common host, and it's nice resolution, well presented, good graphics, but. If you take Corey Goode out of the equation, anything he says, and just listen to what Wilcock is saying, he is laying an argument for there being aliens here, certain types of races. He does say that the little gray critters are biological robots, which I've said for some time. And there were a number of technical things or facts, that I agree with. But what he's saying is that the Illuminati are going to be destroyed and wiped out by the friendly aliens that are here. They're going to help us to reorganize the planet and get rid of the Illuminati and to get rid of some of the bad aliens that have been here as well. So I've been warning about this kind of a scenario being presented to the people for years and on your show many times. And it's in the last amendment to the Cosmic Conspiracy Final Edition 2010, where I talk about this threat. And as I show there in 2 Timothy 2:11 through 12 and Matthew 24:23 through 27, that we're warned by the Messiah, do not be fooled by this great deception, because they're going to come as an angel of light, a messenger of light and harmony and love. And, we're going to deliver you from all the bad guys. And certainly that's going to happen. The Illuminists of this world are going to get taken down in a big and very public way by the quote unquote aliens, which are, I'm pretty sure at this point would be Satan and his fallen ones, posing as friendly alien beings from other worlds or galaxies or whatever. So for that, I put this video up as an example of what is going to be fed to the people, mainly David Wilcock's argument about the alien presence, because as slide 59 is telling you that Nick Pope is pressing for disclosure of everything that wouldn't affect national security about the UFOs. Now, he used to be with the UK Ministry of Defense, the MOD. So, I've watched his work for many years, and he's tried to be a straight shooter in everything he said, holding back some things, obviously, for MOD and UK. But this pressure by him and by Wilcock and their associates and another group, Dr. Greer, these three are pushing for the people to demand a certain amount of knowledge about the UFO situation. And at this time, when that happens, is what I'm talking about, when the deception really becomes full-blown. There will be aliens, there will be good aliens and bad aliens, and even Wilcock says there's a war between these off-worlders, like in the Bible, war in heaven, right? There's so many things that sound like they're the right thing, but it's going to be a matter of discernment if you're here to discern that these are not our Messiah and his helpers. So that's why I put that there, because we're at the time now. It's about to be disclosed. So we don't want to be fooled. Now, with this election going the way it is, I think that there are a number of things that could accelerate this disclosure. You might not connect the two, but it's like this.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going to ask you about that.
You're going to ask me about what?
About disclosure in the election. Go ahead.
Okay. Presidents, as a general rule, were not read into the full secrecy of what we were working on down in Teller's project in Australia with anti-gravity. We have had anti-gravity. There's, being with the project and for the number of years, I guarantee you we've got our own anti-gravity craft. But the things you see in the sky are not all ours. And ours only fly by courtesy of Satan and his minions, who have given us permission to do certain things and to disclose certain things. We're totally under control as far as what technology we can use and explain to the public, because Satan wants his man, whoever he's appointing here to be his world leader. That might be Mohammed bin Salman. There's another reason for that. But anyway, to announce this technology and to dole it out and to explain to people what's happened. And one of the things I think is in Wilcock's video as well, about the rapture, about people disappearing. They aren't like the Christian people. They are people being taken out of the equation here so that their Messiah, Satan, can organize, a wonderful planet under his rule. It's just, if you watch this thing, as I say, put your tongue in cheek and say, oh, yeah, as far as the validity of what they're saying, but stand back and look as though you were a person that didn't know any prophecy, didn't know anything about, Messiah or anything, and see how this argument can be so convincing when things start to happen, like a civil war in the United States, an invasion of the United States, an EMP attack in the United States, a new world order government needs to be set up because of the nukes in the Middle East, and somebody's going to launch them, whether it be the Israelis, the Iranians, or the Pakistanis, or possibly even Saudi Arabia's MBS, because he's now wanting to build, I think it's 17 nuclear reactors between now and 2032, and he's already wanting to start one now, as you know.
Yep.
And slide 61 right next to that lizard head. This is funny. Look at the lizard head, his features, and then glance over at MBS. Do you see any similarities?
Okay, you're going to have to do this. Let me check this out. There we go. Yeah. Aside from that, looking like my former mother-in-law.
All I'm saying is it was an oddity that happened. That's an artist's conception on the left, but
right.
It's an angry face like Ben Salman's. Now, his uncle there, you've read the article, is trying to depose him and take the rule of Saudi Arabia back to his side of the clan. Now, I don't know how MBS is going to get around this, but he must have a plan. And this guy may disappear like Khashoggi. I don't know. But MBS, for him to be the Antichrist, the favorite of Satan and ruling the planet, he has to still be a prince. His father, the king, who is old and feeble, has to still be alive and be king. And MBS has to have the power and military stuff that he needs to rule the world. And he also owns parts of a bank over in the west coast of Saudi Arabia at...
that's the yep.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, you're right. The
blockchain stuff and everything.
Yeah, the blockchain. Thank you. But
yeah, he was. What's that called? It's Mecca. He was born there. Okay.
Right.
And
yeah.
So he's got his fingers investing in the world currency, the blockchain, and which will eventually go down to the individual level for numbering.
Right.
So this guy, he's going to have to do something pretty dramatic, and the disclosure is going to have to come right now. And the United States has to be removed from being a strong player in all this fairly soon. They may be involved in the writing the peace treaty between Israel and the neighboring countries, but we may not be, because we may be in such internal strife and possibly even invaded by Russia and China and Iran that we're just taken out of the equation to help Israel at all. They have to depend on God. And so look for massive changes very quickly.
And I like what you said about someone not, for example, just looking at the big picture. If you take someone who's not aware or educated in biblical issues or prophecy, or not really aware of the Bible, and just a casual observer looking at the big picture, and then compare that to the biblical prophecy and what you're talking about, it's an amazing correlation there. It's amazing how things fit. So, the folks, don't dismiss any of this as just ravings of, a couple of lunatics like Joe and I. Look at the bigger picture here, because I think, and you do a great job of, through your show images page, of really laying this out graphically so we can see this, and we really appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, look at the headlines. Everything's kind of falling into place, isn't it? And it's got to be very rapid too when it happens. I think the timeline is going to accelerate, be very expeditious, as you mentioned, with MBS and the necessities there, if in fact he's the guy.
Yeah.
Did that make sense, or did I just go off the rail? No.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And along the lines of the election and the civil unrest we're going to see, because it's going to happen. It wouldn't matter which side won this. You and I talked about this before. We're going to have civil unrest because that's what the leftists, the socialists, want to do. They want to destroy the American way and join North America and South America and Central America and Mexico all together into one massive state, and Canada, and to force crossbreeding to get the white people and the black people, make them a race of tan, where you have like the brown race. This is what the plan has been for a long time. And when you look at the fact that Holly shows on our webpage today, that 300,000 babies a year born here in the States to illegals from various countries that are here illegally, that's more than the babies born to Americans in all the states at the same time. We are being outbred by our enemy that have come in illegally and are making this silent takeover of our country and our mores.
Right.
Just this election is pivotal in so many ways. There's just not going to be peace here in the United States after this. Now, look at 62, 63, and 64 in the slides. You can look at them later. These are from Newt Gingrich, Senator Bob Hale, and from National Geographic, warning about the dangers we face almost immediately from a nuclear EMP wiping out our electricity and causing massive civil riots in the United States. They're talking about the seriousness of this. So,
looking at that, and we're going to take a closer look at that later.
And we were at the in 2009 in
that was
Niagara
the very
Falls.
event that we
were
talked
there.
about. Yep.
Yeah. Stan, you've taken us out on another great show.
Interesting
on this
stuff.
November 8th midterm day Tuesday. And we will see you back here next week. Want to say hi to Holly and thank you both for all the great work that you do.
Okay, Holly, saying hi and thank you. We're going to grab our hot cup of tea and our warm blankets and set up the fire, and we're going to have an all-nighter.
All right.
There you go.
We'll be thinking about you. God bless you
Thank you.
both and your fur babies. All right.
Hey,
Check
thank
out
you guys.
Hagmann Report Live tomorrow for the Doug Hagmann Radio Show.
Hey,
The Dispatch, and then
I'm
back
going to be
here.
on fire. I'm going to tell you something.
We got a great show tomorrow. We have author Stephen Strang. We have George Upper. We got Brandon Tatum, debut guest. He's going to be coming on. And then Pastor David Langford will take us out.
By this time tomorrow night, we be needing Pastor Langford.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, I'm going in hot on the Doug Hagmann Radio Show. One way or another, tune in 9 o'clock tomorrow. I won't be late.
Have a good night, everyone.